I don't want to rotate my phone up. Okay, there we go. Now we're Facebook Live. All right,
okay,
perfect.
Cool.
Hey, it's Colleen with Planet 1051, and I'm really excited. We took to Facebook Live. You might have heard us a little bit earlier talking to Jan Broberg. Jan's here. You know Jan and her voice from Kayenta Center for the Arts.
Yes.
You're out there. Let's do a little plug for that.
Let's do a little plug
for
the Center for the Arts at Kayenta because we have some great stuff going on out there.
You guys are doing so much.
Oh my gosh, I'm bringing back my Broadway performer on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of February, Valentine's Day weekend.
Fun. Okay.
And he's played Phantom and Jekyll and Hyde and Jean Valjean and 5 of our local professional singers. And they're going to do a musical review, and it's all like Casablanca and Gone with the Wind and
Perfect for Valentine's.
And all these great songs.
Perfect for Valentine's.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Okay, I'm going to shut our blind over here. We're getting like some weird like glow on our faces here.
Well.
See, we can do this. We're going to...
See,
is that better?
Better.
Oh, yes, we look a little bit better. Okay, so Kayenta Center for the Arts, but... Jan, just the other day, my husband said to me, there's this Netflix documentary. We're true crime junkies. I'm just going to say that. I love it. A little bit of background about me. I actually used to do victim services for the Iron County Attorney's Office, and I also worked for the Office of the Guardian Ad Litem, who's an attorney who represents abused and neglected children. So
you know what I'm going to do for you and me? I'm going to trade us seats because our hair is
look at
our faces. And see, I'm a film person.
She knows how to set this up. Jan knows how to do it.
We got to be on this side
perfect.
so we can talk to each other and they can still see us.
I like it because our hair. See, I need Jan to stage me all the time. I find my better side. So anyway, I'm very well versed in that kind of world of child neglect and abuse, and worked in that for a long time before I came on the radio. And so I watch a lot of things. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And we came across Abducted in Plain Sight on Netflix. It was a trending Netflix video, and we watched it, and it's your story, Jan.
It is.
I mean, Jan, it is your story.
Yes.
And it's called Abducted in Plain Sight. It's on Netflix right now. It's trending. I encourage you to watch it. It's not for the kids. I don't think it's not for the kids. But it is definitely a cautionary tale for parents.
Yeah.
So give us kind of your version of this. I mean, the kind of the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
I mean, it's so hard to do that. But what is Abducted in Plain Sight? What happened?
So when I was 10, in little town Pocatello, Idaho, we had a family that moved into our neighborhood. And over the course of the next 2.5 years, became our best friends. My dad was best friends with the dad. My mom, good friends with the wife. They had 5 children. The oldest and I kind of had a crush on each other, and on down. Everybody had a best friend.
It's just a normal neighborhood.
Neighborhood, absolutely. Yeah. And 2.5 years later, I woke up in the back of a moving motorhome with my wrists and ankles strapped to the back bed, partition, couldn't see who was driving, and I had been kidnapped. And come to find out, there was a little box playing in my ear, so the brainwashing and manipulation began immediately when I woke up to this eerie sounding voice. And 2.5 days later of traveling and trying to see out the window, I knew I was in the desert. The man who I didn't know he had kidnapped me. I thought I'd been kidnapped by other people, but he was on the bed on the little sofa of the motorhome covered in blood, and it was this second father, this man of our family. Knew so well. I thought of him as a second father. Yeah. And he was passed out and covered in blood,
and he looked like he needed help as well.
And he looked like he needed help, and I'm shaking him and crying and, oh, B, brother B, wake up, and he wakes up and he says, what happened? We were going out to go horseback riding when this white light came out of the car, out of the sky, and the car went out of control, and oh my gosh, I'm covered in blood. What happened?
This whole story is
That's
playing
how
out.
it started, that we had both been kidnapped by a being from another planet.
Fast forward, this family friend B, as you refer to him, he is brainwashing, he's manipulating this whole situation because he's a predator.
Yeah, he's a pedophile, he's a predator, he's also really a criminal.
Yeah,
that we find out in the end as well.
And he kidnaps you not once, but it happens again.
Again at age 14. The FBI finds me 39 days later, the first time, brings me home. I'm not telling anyone because, of course, I'm completely brainwashed that if I tell, I'll be vaporized, my sister will be taken, my dad will be killed, my other sister will go blind. I mean, people know how to give children the right threats
Yeah.
or the right rewards so that they don't tell.
Yeah.
So I didn't, and he went to he got off on mental defect, and then he was out, and he took me a second time.
Yeah.
The brainwashing continued. I'd get notes from kids at school, go to this phone booth at this time of day, sit on the floor, the phone will ring, and
So he was using, that's I think what's so interesting about this story is your perpetrator was using the whole, your whole life around you.
Yes.
Your parents are involved in this, your siblings,
Yeah.
everyone is an extension
Yes.
of this victimization.
yeah, because really and so many predators, this is how they operate. They're able to manipulate all the people around the child, and they do that slowly over time, most of them over time, and they can just be looking at your parent or your person in the face all the while they're over here, abusing
Yeah.
your child.
Yeah.
And they know how to manipulate, brainwash, and get everybody involved in that manipulation without the people knowing, of course.
Right.
So that then when something happens, half the people at church were like, well, you're not going to press charges. He didn't hurt her. She said he didn't hurt her. What will his wife and his kids do? If you press charges. And my parents are like, oh yeah, because everybody loves this guy.
Well, and that's an interesting thing because your parents were heavily involved in this victimization.
Yes.
I mean, as far as I saw, your parents were victims.
They were
of this perpetrator as well.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people watch this film and they say, how could those parents do this?
Right.
How could they? Automatically they just think, well, I would never do that as a parent. But this is 1970. This is
Right.
Pocatello, Idaho. This is someone who is a parental figure in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately is the story.
And I like to say to people, so who is your most trusted, relative or friend that if they happen to be on that side of town and your daughter's at the mall and they called you up and said, hey, I'm over here, I just saw so-and-so and so, Amy with her friends over here at the mall. Do you want me to pick her up and bring her home?
You would be totally fine with that.
Of course you would.
Right, because there was no...
We do it all the time. People think they're so smart.
Yeah.
Well, they're not, because we had 800,000 cases of child sex abuse reported in the United States last year. Yeah. Those are the reported ones. Most people don't report for years and years and years. So I like to tell people, somebody that you know, that you love, that you trust, is being abused by someone that you know, love, and trust. Right now, you may not know about it for 10 years, but if I can get the conversation started, maybe you'll see something that you don't want to see because it's too icky and awful to even entertain the idea that that could be true. But maybe you'll be willing to do that after seeing my story, because that's the hope. That's the reason I told it.
And that's the thing. It's a hard story to watch.
Yeah.
And I mean, you had to live that story, and people are so quick to judge, like, oh, how could your parents make those decisions? How could they do this? But again, we have to put it in our minds that this wasn't a stranger that jumped out of the bushes.
No.
This isn't what it is. And I think that's what's so special about you coming with your story and your family coming. Your dad passed away.
Pauline. He did.
He passed away not very long ago, and our condolences for that, because he does seem like the sweetest man.
And I don't think he ever forgave himself for being stupid and the things that he did. But I said, Dad, you were manipulated too.
Right.
It's one thing to make a mistake. We all have those that we don't want everybody to know about. That we certainly don't broadcast.
I think we have a list of them.
Most of us do, anyway. I mean, there's a few perfect people out there.
No, there's not.
So most of us have something that we really aren't broadcasting to the whole world. But I said it's different when your mistake was being orchestrated by a master puppeteer up here. If I can get this person to do that, then I'll have them over a barrel. And if I can cause a smoke screen over here to divert their attention, then I have more access to the child over here.
And that's exactly
people don't
what
see
happened. I mean, and it got to the point where your parents lost their livelihood because of this perpetrator. He burned down your father's business.
He did, and 12 other businesses. A whole city block went down in flames because of this guy.
And on your case, he ended up not serving any jail time.
No, 19 days.
19 days. And again,
mental hospital.
It's Abducted in Plain Sight is the name of the documentary. It's hard to watch. I mean, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to watch, but it has an important message,
Right.
and that's why you're here,
Yeah,
right?
it really is. That's the
why we're
reason
doing
I
it.
started talking about this years ago. I would talk to a book club or to a big conference or to anybody that asked, because I just wanted people to be more aware. I wanted to maybe help that one person. Actually, it's about 50% of every audience I talk to start their own healing process, because those are the numbers. It's 5 out of 10 women and 2 out of 10 boys that are sexually assaulted by someone, generally almost always that they know.
Yeah, and
before the age of 18. It's a huge problem. It is so big.
Yeah.
And it's mostly the final frontier is this topic. We've got the Me Too movement. We know that there's domestic violence. We know there's abuse, physical, mental, sexual. But why are the numbers not changing? Why in 2019 is it just as big or bigger a problem
What's that
than it was
conversation?
in the 70s?
Right.
What is missing?
What's
It's
the conversation we need to have
Right.
in our own families, in our communities? I mean, it is. It's a village. Your perpetrator showed that he created everything around you to perpetrate this crime, and it's
Like
again.
that gymnastics coach you
Yes,
mentioned.
we were talking just off air. Dr. Larry Nassar.
Yeah.
He was the USA gymnastics coach, and there was a podcast that I just listened to recently. NPR put it out. It's called Believe, and you have hundreds of victims of this doctor, and I use the term, he flipped the script on them. He would literally sit in front of police officers and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that she feels that way. Let me show you all the medical reasons why I'm doing this to her." He was actually sexually abusing children in the same room as their parents.
Right.
And
nobody told.
And nobody told. And when these girls did tell, he flipped the script and he made it look like he was the one who knew everything, because he was that master manipulator, just like your perpetrator as well.
Great example.
And at the end with the Larry Nassar case, over 200 victims were at his court sentencing that were able to stand up and face him at the end of the day, and he will now spend the rest of his life in prison. But the conversation is changing.
Yes, and this is changing. Where I appreciate you letting me be on Facebook Live with Colleen. I'm so lucky.
Well, that's
right.
it's so great. I've always loved you, Jan. I've always loved you and your personality. And the one last thing that I wanted to ask you, that a few people, as I've been talking about Abducted in Plain Sight with, they wanted to know how you recovered. How did your family move on? How did you learn to trust your parents again? How did you learn to trust others? What did you do?
So that's a pretty long, complicated question in some ways, because it didn't happen overnight.
No,
it certainly happened over time. I was very lucky to have had 12 very ideal childhood years with parents who we talked around the dinner table. There were no electronics. We actually talked face to face. We didn't text each other. So we were very engaged with our parents, who were great communicators, who unconditionally loved us. So that was the foundation. So I had something to go back to. Thank goodness for that. But also, I had some great counselors along the way, and I also did something called the Landmark Forum, which was a huge turning point when I was 30, that really allowed me to see that now I have the rest of my life that I get to create, that I'm not a victim, or that I don't have to live my life based on this experience. I get to create what is the rest of my life. And so I've really tried to develop practices in my life that I hope to share in a second book. Our book is coming out in March.
What's
about this
called?
Story, Abducted in Plain Sight.
Abducted in Plain Sight, okay.
And then there's a second book that I'm working on right now, just writing chapter headings at the moment. But that will be the book that will kind of take through, the audience through, how do you go through something like this, a 10% experience, and not let it run your whole life, but be able to take the 90%, which is the rest of your life, and put practices in place where, I keep a gratitude journal. I mean, I remember
those little things every day you have to do,
that you choose to do, that you choose to put your mindset and your
effort, your control of your life.
And I haven't lived a perfect life. I've made mistakes too, and I think some of those things came from this experience that I had as a child, the mistakes that I've made, because I've been through a few marriages. Trying to figure it out, trying to feel normal and healthy, and I'm in a really great place in my life right now. So it's really it's really a good time. The timing was right, I think, for this to happen now. And to be in the top, never in a million years did I think it would get to Netflix. And then to be trending in the top 10 and getting calls from Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil. And
I know.
The New York Times and podcasters in Australia. It's pretty cool.
I think it shows how critical it is for our communities to have this conversation.
Yeah.
That people do know they're ready for this conversation. Now's the time. Mm-hmm. And your strength and your willingness and bravery to come forward, and your mother, she's still advocating for this as well. And she's amazing. It's an amazing story. So I encourage you to go watch Abducted in Plain Sight. It's also going to be screened. Doc Utah's screening it.
Yeah, we're going to do a screening at the theater at the Center for the Arts at Kayenta.
At Kayenta.
And we've invited the Dove Center and the Children's Justice Center and also Youth Futures, which is the homeless teens organization, to come out and be on the panel, and we'll have a Q&A after, so we'll answer some questions and do that. And then all the proceeds will benefit those great organizations that need support and funding so that they can continue to serve the children and women and men in our community.
So if this story rings true to you, if there's some truth there, just know that there is help, there is support out there. You can come forward. And it's stories like this that give others that strength, and the community the strength to do
So if they want to come out, go to kayentaarts.com, the website, and look for Abducted in Plain Sight. You'll see it. It's in red.
There.
It's me hugging the pedophile.
Not a picture.
But anyway, that's the picture, and then you'll go in there and make your donation, because all the proceeds go to help those organizations.
So it's going to be screened February 22nd, but you can watch it tonight.
That's true, on
Netflix. And I'm sure there's more conversation to this, and it's just great. I'm just grateful that you took some time to sit down with us.
I'm just thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you. It definitely touched me, and as a parent myself, really had me thinking. And I think that's what your purpose is.
It
is for, as hard as it is to watch and as crazy. And yes, there were times I wanted to jump out of my chair during your documentary, but it has made me think and have that conversation with my husband. And,
what are we missing?
What would it look like in our lives?
Yeah.
And it's an important conversation. It's a hard one, but it's important. And so
thanks.
thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Love you so much.
I feel the same. And all of you watching. Thank you.